Joining us now is Peter Saundry, who is Executive Director of the NCSE. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Talk first for us about the broad strategic vision of NCSE.
Well, NCSE is about connecting science with its applications, with practice, with policy. And so this conference is sort of the heart and soul of what we do. We have scientists from a variety of disciplines and engineers, we have policymakers, we have environmental managers, and it's really about getting people to work across those traditional boundaries so that all this great ingenuity that comes up in academia, in the labs, ends up moving into the real world and making a difference. And this is sort of, I always think of this conference, if I had to describe one word to put down underneath it, it's cross-pollination.
That's a good word.
Okay, so if you look around here, every session has a variety of people from different perspectives, and we just want them to go away from this conference with new relationships and new ways of connecting what they do to other people.
And that real world aspect is so key.
Absolutely. And for energy and climate change, now is a really, really interesting time. So we've just turned a corner. So we've been looking at sort of climate change as really not much happening for probably much of the last 10 to 15 years. And finally in the last year, we've started to see some real progress. So the road to Paris is what we're on right now. So in December, the 21st Conference of Parties, when the 195 nations of the world will gather in Paris to talk about, can we reach some kind of agreement on climate change? Okay, you know, 5 years ago there was a big meeting in Copenhagen that was a total disaster. Okay, everybody was expecting some kind of agreement and we got next to nothing. We had some useful conversations, but we didn't really get much out of it. Paris is going to be very, very different. So President Obama and the President of China made a major announcement setting targets for carbon emissions, the first time that China had done that. The European unions are pushing very aggressively a carbon market. We have the northeastern states, United States, with their carbon market, California, Korea just launched this. All of these things are happening. And on the energy side, lots of interesting things are happening also. So solar is finally becoming cost competitive without any subsidies. Okay? And so the big question, there's a couple of sessions about this at the conference, is how do we scale from solar energy being something like 1% of the nation's energy supply to being something that provides 5 to 10% of the global energy supply. And so the globe uses what is about 16 terawatts of energy. So tera is one with a lot of zeros on the end, okay? And so there's this thing called the terawatt challenge. How do you take clean energy sources like solar, like biomass, like wind, hydro and so forth, and scale them so that they're meaningful on a global scale? And we're in a position to do that for the first time. But it's not a question of simply technology. You get the technology and everything is fine. It's going to take a combination of technology and policy and practice and people realizing the time has come for certain things, and then it's all going to come together. And what we're hoping to see at this conference are people from those different sectors sitting down and figuring out how they can be relevant to each other. And if we see that, then this conference is really significant, really important.
And this whole timing aspect is that why it's important to have the theme of it be energy and climate change?
Exactly. So this Paris meeting is going, we hope, we're not there yet, but we hope will be the most significant agreement on climate change. Now, we don't anticipate an agreement that will be some long-term solution. We're still a long way from that. But it will be the first time we've had a really serious agreement that all of the nations of the world are committed to. So when we did the Kyoto Agreement back in '96, it was the very affluent nations of the world, and places like China weren't a part of that. China now is emitting almost twice what the United States is. So people realize unless you've got all the nations of the world involved, this isn't going anywhere. And we are going to see over the coming months every nation laying out its own plan with targets for limiting its emissions. That is really big, and that's what this whole conference is about and how we make that transition. And energy, if you don't solve the energy problem of taking carbon out of energy, there is no solution to climate change.
Well, it sounds like there's some exciting things coming up. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.